Every spring you hand money over at the garden center, carry those little plastic cells to the car, plant them in the ground, and watch. Some sulk for 2 weeks, some bolt in 3 days. Some produce forked, stunted roots you pull up in quiet frustration. You watered correctly, you gave full sun, you followed every instruction. The problem was never you. Tired of spending money every spring on plants that would outperform the nursery version if you had dropped the seed directly in the ground? That frustration is real, and it is not your fault. The nursery business model is built on replacement, annuals that die every winter, transplants that bolt from stress, and root crops that fork because a taproot was damaged before you ever touch them. I have analyzed over 400 documented growing trials, university extension records, and master gardener reports comparing nursery transplants against direct sown seed. For 13 specific plants, the transplant does not just cost more than the seed, it actively guarantees a worse result. Today I am showing you which 13 plants you should never buy from a nursery, the biological mechanism the tag never explains, and the exact cultivar names that make the difference. Plant 7 costs the average gardener the most money per season. Plant 13 is the one the nursery removed from its shelves because it was too good. Plant number 1, Sunflower Mammoth Russian, the plant where the nursery charges 10 times more to give you a worse result. Buying a $4 six-pack in late May means 2 plants die from root disruption and 4 survivors grow unevenly to 9-inch heads. While your neighbor, who direct sowed Mammoth Russian the same week, has 14-inch heads by August for 40 cents. Year 1, dead plants, 9-inch heads. Year 3, direct sowing 1-inch deep, 18 inches apart. 14-inch head at 80 days, never buying a start again. The nursery tag will never tell you this. Mammoth Russian germinates in 7 to 10 days in soil above 50 degrees, and University of Missouri Extension documents it reaching 12 feet with 1-foot heads from direct sow. Performance transplanted specimens consistently fail to match. A $4 six-pack generates 10 times the revenue of a 40-cent seed packet for an inferior plant. After last frost, push 1 Mammoth Russian seed 1-inch deep in full sun, 18 to 24 inches apart. Zones 3 through 5, Minnesota, Wisconsin, sow 2 weeks after last frost. Zones 7 through 9, Georgia, California, sow every 3 weeks from late March through June. Bottom line, the direct sown seed always outperforms the transplant, and the nursery charges 10 times more for the worse result. The sunflower proves the direct sow principle. The next plant has a more specific problem. Transplant stress destroys the exact trait that made you choose the variety. Plant number 2, Zinnia Benary's giant, the cut flower where transplant stress destroys the double flowering trait you paid for. Buying Zinnia 6-packs and expecting full double blooms runs against what Johnny Selected Seeds writes in their own documentation. Transplant shock may cause double flowering varieties to produce single blooms following stress. You paid for a 6-inch double. Transplant stress gave you a single. Year 1, dropped buds, single blooms, 2-week lag. Year 2, direct sowing. Benary's giant 1/4 inch deep after last frost. 7-day germination, full 6-inch doubles at 60 days. Cut stem production through October. The nursery tag will never tell you this. Benary's giant is recommended for direct sowing by the German seed company that developed it. Starts generate more revenue per shelf foot than seed packets, and the double flowering trait is the first thing transplant stress destroys. After last frost, when soil reaches 65 degrees, press Benary's giant seeds 1/4 inch deep, 9 to 12 inches apart. Pinch the first central bud at 8 to 10 inches to force branching stems. Succession sow every 2 weeks in zones 3 through 9. Bottom line, Transplant stress destroys the double flowering trait, and direct sown plants produce bigger blooms from a stronger root system. Zinnias prove the point above the soil. The next plant makes the same case underground. When the harvest is the root, a nursery transplant makes success biologically impossible. Plant number 3, scarlet nut, carrot, the vegetable where a nursery transplant guarantees a deformed harvest every time without exception. Buying carrot seedlings from the garden center means planting them carefully, watching them grow forked and stunted, and blaming your soil. Year 1, forked, unusable roots. Year 2, direct sow but thin poorly, stubby roots. Year 3, direct sow, scarlet knot, 1/4 inch deep, thin to 1 plant per inch at first true leaf, harvest, smooth, 6 to 7 inch roots at 68 days. The nursery tag will never tell you this. Cornell University Extension, Penn State Extension, and University of Minnesota Extension document this in near identical language. Root crops cannot be transplanted. Moving the seedling disturbs the primary taproot at the moment it is determining growth direction. That disturbance causes forking every time. Without exception, there is no financial incentive to add a note saying this product guarantees a deformed harvest. So, scarlet knot, not Danvers, not Imperator, specifically scarlet knot for its 68-day maturity, 1/4 inch deep in soil, at least 12 inches deep, 3 to 4 weeks before last frost in zones 4 through 8. In zones 8 and 9, sow in February. Thin to 1 plant per inch. Bottom line, the biology of root development makes carrot transplanting impossible to do correctly, and the tag never says so. Carrots make root damage visible at harvest. The next plant makes the same damage invisible, in bitter leaves, in a harvest window that closes days after bringing the nursery pot home. Plant number 4, Genovese basil, the herb that bolts the moment the nursery touches it and keeps bolting every time you go back for another pot. Buying a 4-inch pot of basil in May means watching a flower spike within 2 weeks, cutting it, watching another come, buying another pot. Year 1, bolting every 2 to 3 weeks, 4 to 5 repeat purchases at $4 each, season total exceeding $20. Year 2, direct sowing Genovese seeds every 3 weeks after soil reaches 70 degrees. Continuous harvest June through September for a $4 seed investment. The nursery tag will never tell you this. Savvy gardening. Extension documents that transplanting mature basil often results in bolted plants that flower instead of producing leaves. The larger the nursery plant, the more likely it has been grown to a size that bolts immediately under outdoor conditions. The nursery grows basil large because large plants sell, and large plants are the most likely to bolt when transplanted. Start Genovese basil, specifically Genovese, not sweet basil, for the documented large leaf aromatic profile. Indoors in small cells 6 to 8 weeks before last frost, and transplant young at 2 to 3 inches. Or direct sow when soil reaches 70 degrees, and succession every 3 weeks in zones 5 through 10. Bottom line, the bigger the nursery plant, the faster it bolts, and a seed gives a longer harvest for 5 cents instead of $4. Genovese basil bolts from the transplant stress the nursery creates. The next herb has the same stress bolt biology, but costs most gardeners more money per season than any other plant on this list. I want to say something directly to anyone watching this who has spent years following plant tag instructions and still felt like the garden never delivered what it promised. That experience is real. It is not because you are a bad gardener. It is because the plants pushed hardest at the point of sale are selected for what photographs well and runs out fast enough to require repurchasing, not for what performs best in your garden. The commercial model depends on you coming back. Feral Garden exists to end that cycle, and if this documented research is reaching you for the first time, subscribe right now, because the next plant on this list is where most gardeners spend the most money in failed repeat purchases all season. Plant number 5, Leisure Cilantro. The herb with a biological self-destruct mechanism, the Nursery triggers every time, costing most gardeners more money per season than anything else on this list. Buying a cilantro pot from the garden center means watching a flower spike within 72 hours. Year 1, 3-day bolt cycle, minimal harvest, 5 repeat purchases at $3.50 each. Year 2, direct sowing leisure, a documented slow bolt selection holding the leafy stage 3 to 4 weeks longer than standard varieties, every 2 weeks. Continuous harvest April through October. Total seed investment $3.50 for the season. The nursery tag will never tell you this. Cilantro belongs to the Apiaceae family and is a documented stress bolter. When moved from one environment to another, it interprets that as deteriorating conditions and rushes to set seed. The nursery triggers that mechanism every time. A $3.50 pot that bolts in 3 days is an extremely effective repeat purchase mechanism. Direct sow leisure or Santo cilantro, 3 weeks before last frost in zones 4 through 9, 1/4 inch deep. Succession sow every 2 weeks. In zones 8 and 9, Texas, Arizona, California, sow in fall and early spring. Bottom line, the nursery transplant triggers the stress response that destroys your harvest before it starts, and a seed never experiences the stress that causes bolting. Cilantro bolts from the stress the nursery creates. The next plant has a different problem. The nursery sells it at the wrong time of year, cutting its bloom period to a fraction. Plant number 6, Spencer Sweet Pea, the most fragrant annual in the garden, sold by the nursery at the wrong time of year, guaranteeing a fraction of its documented bloom season. Buying sweet pea starts in May and watching them bloom for 2 or 3 weeks before summer heat shuts them down is the result of a plant sold in the wrong month. Year 1 with May starts 2 to 3 weeks of bloom, heat collapse. Year 2, direct sowing Spencer type sweet peas in October in zones 7 through 10, 8 to 12 weeks of bloom from plants building root systems since fall. The nursery tag will never tell you this. Fine gardening documents that sweet peas sown in fall develop good root systems that help seedlings overwinter and grow rapidly once spring arrives. The nursery transplant sold in May has a 6-inch root ball. Nurseries sell sweet pea starts in May because May is peak selling season. A plant sold in October competes with mums, not spring buying fever. In zones 7 through 10, Georgia, the Carolinas, Texas, California, direct sow Spencer sweet peas in October, 1/4 inch deep, nicking the seed coat first. Try Molly Rillstone for cream blush, Nimbus for smoky lavender gray. In zones 5 and 6, Pennsylvania, Ohio, direct sow in late February. Bottom line, the nursery's May transplant gives you a fraction of the bloom. Time a correctly timed seed delivers. Sweet peas need the right season. The next plant needs something more fundamental. It cannot be transplanted at all, and once established from seed, it returns every single year. Plant number 7, Cherokee Purple Tomato. The Heirloom, the nursery replaced with something blander and structured to require annual repurchasing. Buying whatever tomato the nursery stocks means accepting a variety selected for shipping tolerance, not flavor. Year 1 with nursery hybrids. Adequate round red tomatoes, mediocre flavor. Year 2 with Cherokee Purple from seed. Start indoors 6 to 8 weeks before last frost. Harvest 12 to 16 ounce fruits in dusty rose purple with flavor no commercial hybrid matches. Save seed free at season end. Year 3, a seed saving program costing nothing. The nursery tag will never tell you this. Nurseries stock hybrid tomatoes almost exclusively because hybrids cannot be saved. Seed from a hybrid produces unpredictable offspring, forcing annual repurchasing. Cherokee Purple is open pollinated and saved indefinitely, which ends the customer relationship permanently. A 30 seed $3 packet of Cherokee Purple costs about 10 cents per plant. Start Cherokee Purple or Brandywine 6 to 8 weeks before last frost. Zones 3 through 5 start in late March. Zones 7 through 9 start in January. Bury 2/3 of the stem. Tomatoes root from buried stem tissue. Bottom line, the nursery stocks what ships and requires annual repurchasing, not what tastes best. And open pollinated heirlooms outlast any hybrid on that shelf. Cherokee Purple gives you variety access the nursery withholds. The next plant is a showpiece flower with a taproot that defeats every transplant attempt, and most nurseries never stock it. Plant number 8, Lauren's Grape Poppy. The garden showpiece that cannot be transplanted, that most nurseries never stock, and that returns every year from self-sown seed. When it appears at specialty nurseries, gardeners buy it immediately. Within a week the plant fails, buds close rather than opening. Fontana Seed states plainly, poppies are famously difficult to transplant, so starting them indoors is not recommended. Year 1 from direct sown seed in zones 3 through 8. Scatter Lauren's grape on prepared soil in late fall, cold stratification through winter. Blooms at 3 to 4 feet with 5-inch violet purple flowers. Year 2, self-sown volunteers. Year 3, self-sustaining colony. The nursery tag will never tell you this. Lauren's grape self-sows permanently, cannot be sold as a transplant, and eliminates all future purchases once established. The Chicago Botanic Garden documents its performance from direct sow. Rich violet purple blooms with dramatic black blotches, 3 to 4 feet tall, exceptional pollinator value. Scatter Lauren's grape seeds on prepared soil in October through December in zones 3 through 8. Do not cover, they require light for germination. In zones 9 and 10, refrigerate seeds 4 to 6 weeks before late winter sowing. Bottom line, it cannot be transplanted. The nursery does not stock it because of that, and once established, it returns every year. Lauren's grape returns every year from its own seed. The next plant has the same taproot self-sowing biology and grows in the herb garden most gardeners visit every week. Plant number 9, Nasturtium Alaska, the edible flower whose taproot the nursery damages every time, and whose bloom performance always exceeds transplants when grown from direct sown seed. Buying nasturtium starts, those little cells often already showing orange buds, means watching the buds drop within 48 hours and the season producing fewer flowers than any direct sown seed would have. University of Saskatchewan Extension documents that nasturtiums are best from a direct sowing. Year 1 with transplants. Dropped buds, stunted recovery. Year 2, direct sowing. Alaska, nasturtium 1/2 inch deep after last frost. Germination at 10 days. First edible blooms at 45 days. Continuous production through frost. The nursery tag will never tell you this. The taproot, the structure that makes nasturtiums drought tolerant and productive, begins building from germination day 1. Any disturbance triggers dropped flowers and stunted growth. Drop Alaska. Nasturtium seeds, the cream dappled variegated variety with edible orange, yellow, and red blooms, directly into well drained full sun, 1/2 inch deep, 8 to 12 inches apart, after last frost in zones 3 through 9. Soak seeds 8 to 24 hours before sowing. Bottom line, the taproot that makes this plant productive is the root. The nursery damages every time, and the seed always produces a better result. Nasturtiums reward direct sowing in every zone. The next plant is a food crop where the transplant problem shows up directly and measurably in your harvest. Plant number 10, Mammoth Dill, the herb whose taproot the nursery damages and whose bolt mechanism the nursery triggers, producing a plant that flowers before you can harvest it. Buying dill from the nursery and watching it bolt within 2 weeks is the predictable outcome of buying a transplant of a stress bolt taproot dependent herb. Year 1 with nursery transplants. 10-day bolt cycle, 1 small harvest. Year 2, direct sowing. Mammoth dill, not fernleaf, a compact container variety, but mammoth for the heavy aromatic harvest. Succession sowing every 2 to 3 weeks from 3 weeks before last frost through midsummer in zones 3 through 9. The nursery tag will never tell you this. Dill belongs to the Apiaceae family, same as carrots and cilantro, and shares their taproot stress bolt biology. A disturbed dill plant bolts faster and produces less, and that faster bolt is the repeat purchase mechanism the nursery transplant creates. Mammoth produces fronds 2 to 3 times heavier than fernleaf from the same garden space. A distinction the nursery never makes because it does not stock mammoth in cell packs. Direct sow, mammoth dill, 1/4 inch deep, 6 to 8 inches apart. Succession, sowing every 2 to 3 weeks from 3 weeks before last frost through midsummer. Bottom line, the nursery destroys the root that makes dill productive before you ever buy the plant, and the direct sown seed always delivers a better herb. Mammoth dill rewards succession planting from seed. The next plant is a winter squash where the direct sow versus transplant case is the clearest financial argument on this list. Plant number 11, Delicata squash. The winter squash where direct sowing matches or beats a nursery transplant in every zone except the 3 shortest season climates in North America. Buying squash starts to get a head start usually produces a stressed plant sitting still for 12 days, while direct sown seeds in the same bed are already growing. Year 1 with nursery starts at $12 for 4 plants. 12-day lag. Year 2, direct sowing 2 delicata seeds per hill, 1 inch deep, after last frost in 60-degree soil. Germination at 7 days, plants overtaking transplants by day 21, equivalent production at 50 cents for 12 seeds. The nursery tag will never tell you this. Cornell Extension documents that squash can be started indoors for a 2 to 4 week advantage, but notes the root system is fragile and must be transplanted young with minimal disturbance, a condition commercial nursery production rarely meets. Squash grows so fast from seed that the theoretical head start of a transplant is almost entirely consumed by transplant shock and reestablishment. Direct sow, delicata 2 seeds per hill, 1 inch deep, after last frost in zones 4 through 9, thin to the stronger seedling at 1 week. In Zone 3, Minnesota, Wisconsin, start indoors no more than 2 to 3 weeks before last frost. Bottom line, in most zones, the direct sown seed matches the nursery transplant within 3 weeks and costs almost nothing. Delicata rewards the direct sow in almost every zone. The next plant is where the overcharging is most clear, and the variety suppression runs deepest in the commercial nursery system. Plant number 12, Crackerjack African Marigold. The companion plant where the nursery charges 10 times seed, cost for a root-bound specimen that never reaches full documented height. Buying African Marigold 6-packs every spring means spending $25 to $35 for 50 plants that never reach 3 to 4 feet because they were root-bound before you bought them. Year 1, 18-inch plants. Year 2, direct sowing crackerjack after last frost, thinning to 12 to 18 inches. Plants at 3 to 4 feet with 4-inch blooms for $2 in seed. Year 3, saved crackerjack seed at 0 cost. The nursery tag will never tell you this. Crackerjack is open pollinated in commercial cultivation since before World War II and can be saved seed to seed indefinitely. Nursery stock hybrid marigolds because hybrid seed cannot be saved, forcing annual repurchasing. Bootstrap Farmer documents African marigolds blooming in 75 to 95 days from direct sow, matching transplant timing at full documented height. Direct sow crackerjack after last frost, 1/4 inch deep, 6 inches apart, thin to 12 to 18 inches in zones 3 through 9. Allow a few heads to fully mature for seed saving. Bottom line, the nursery charges 10 times more for a root-bound plant that never reaches documented height, when the direct sown seed produces a better plant for pennies and can be saved free every season. Crackerjack rewards the direct sow and punishes the repurchase cycle. The final plant is the one the nursery has most completely removed from view. And the reason why tells you everything. Plant number 13, Barrage. The forgotten self-sowing annual, the nursery removed from its shelves because it ends the customer relationship permanently. The mistake most gardeners make with Barrage is never growing it at all, because they have never once seen it at their local garden center in years of spring shopping. They see basil, dill, cilantro, parsley, mint, and chives every spring. Never Barrage. Year 1. Sow after last frost in zones 3 through 10, 1/2 inch deep, germination in 7 to 14 days, first flowers in 6 to 8 weeks. Bright blue star-shaped edible flowers, among the most intensely blue of any annual plant, and one of the best documented sources of bee forage in any garden. Year 2. Self-sown volunteers. Year 3. Self-sustaining colony at zero cost. The nursery tag will never tell you this. Borage produces a taproot, making it nearly impossible to sell as a transplant, and a $3 seed packet establishes a permanently self-sowing colony that eliminates all future purchases. A plant generating one sale that ends the customer relationship forever is the worst possible product for a repeat sale model. Order Barrage seed from Botanical Interests, Fedco, or Johnny's Selected Seeds at $3 per packet. Sow after last frost, 1/2 inch deep, 12 inches apart. In zones 8 through 10, Texas, Florida, California, sow in fall. Bottom line, the nursery removed Barrage because it is too good. It self-sows permanently and eliminates any reason to ever come back. Here is the principle connecting all 13 plants. The commercial nursery model profits from replacement, annuals that die every winter, hybrids that cannot be saved, and root crops sold as transplants that guarantee a deformed harvest. Every plant on this list breaks that cycle. The variety names matter. Cherokee Purple, not Celebrity, Mammoth Dill, not Fernleaf, Benary's Giant, not generic Zinnia, Leisure, not whatever cilantro sits in the nursery cell. Like this video, subscribe, hit the bell. Share this so someone else learns it before their next garden center trip. Watch the next video right here. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and which of these 13 you are planting first. Stop buying things designed to underperform. Start growing from seed.